A little bit. It's the political ecology of conservation and development in Tanzania, because we realized that that's what we were doing, really, rather than political economy. I started with political economy because that's what I do, but then I realized, no, we're not doing that. And it's edited by myself, Christine Noe, and Dan Brockington. We have 11 chapters in it. It is being finished as we speak. We have an assistant who's cleaning up some of the work. We expect it to be out within a year from now. I hope that by October next year it will be ready, so we have another excuse to do a book launch. My dear friends and colleagues here, Dan Brockington and Christine Noe, launched the previous book of another project yesterday at University of Dar es Salaam. It was a blast, I can tell you that. It was fantastic. So I want one too, just like that. Oh yeah, right. The book costs 0 shillings. We bought the open license fee, which means that anybody in the world can go to the link, download the book in PDF for free. If you want a physical copy, that's another story. That one is very expensive. But given that the access to internet is a lot better, people have better phones, or even on a computer you can read it there. But of course, there will be physical copies for the people who are closest to the project. So that's a major thing. So this is just a peek into the book. It's essentially part of what we do today is to give a selected peek into these chapters. We have a first part that is more of introduction and major issues. So an introduction to the book and the project. Then chapter 2 is an excursus in the history of conservation in Tanzania and the policy instruments that are being used. Chapter 3 is about design and methodology. You will get bits and pieces in various presentations. Then we have a second part that is a sector analysis. This is what we're going to do today. So we'll look at wildlife, forestry, and coastal resources. And there is one chapter for each. So if you're only interested in one, you can go straight into those chapters. And then we have a comparative analysis. And this is, I think, not to say that the sector analysis is very important, but the whole project was to try to understand across the various resources what we could understand that goes beyond the specificity of that resource. And that's our day 2 tomorrow. We're going to look fairly closely into this. So we look at legitimacy, chapter 7. We look at complexity in chapter 8. We look at the environmental impacts of these different kinds of sustainability partnerships in chapter 9. We look at the livelihood slash socioeconomic slash prosperity impact in chapter 10, and then we have a short conclusion at the end. So that's the book, and we're going to, again, follow some of that in the next 2 days. So after this introduction, we will go straight into the presentation of forestry. The organization here is that we're going to have first a scientific presentation about the content of the research and the results. And then after that, we discuss the policy briefs where we summarize the implications for policy and project design. You have copies of drafts of the policy briefs on your table. These are drafts. We did it on purpose. We didn't want to come with something finished and say, hey, this is what we think you should be doing. We wanted to come with the results of our research and say, what do you think about these ideas? And then get your feedback before we produce the final policy briefs. So this is actually done on purpose in relation to coming with some ideas and then discuss them with you. So each section, each resource will have 2 slots. One scientific presentation with then a reviewer, 2 reviewers for each to discuss the solidity of the results, and then a discussion of the policy brief. And thank you so much to all the reviewers and discussants that have accepted this task, including people in this room. So there will be breaks in between sessions. You have the details in the booklet in front of you, so I don't need to go through the details now. We're trying to keep time. And then tomorrow there will be the more comparative work, and the structure will be the same. Okay. Now, before we move on to the first forestry presentation, I would like to have a brief round of introduction here in the room. Could you please state your name and affiliation, and we'll go around quickly so that we can link faces to names and affiliation. Maybe we can, if you don't mind, we can start from the back there on my left side. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Wilhelm Kiwango. I'm from the Department of Geography, the University of Dodoma.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Richard Mbwambo from Tanzania Forest Research Institute. I'm a forest ecologist.
Good morning. I'm Charles Meshak from Tanzania Forest Conservation Group.
Good morning. My name is Makala Jasper. I'm from MCDI.
Good morning. My name is Juman Abdallah from Sokoine University of Agriculture. I'm also coordinating a project called Livestock in the Forest, funded by Danida.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Abdallah Manauta. I'm working with Tanzania Wildlife Management Authority. Of late, I'm leading the team of establishing a new game reserve, which is called Wamimbiki Game Reserve. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Idi Mwanyoka. I work at the University of Dodoma in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies as a lecturer, research, and consultant, with a keen interest in issues related to natural resource management, with a particular interest in local community participation. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Simbua, acting warden in charge from Mnazi Bay Estuary Marine Park, Mtwara.
Good morning. My name is Changama Francis.
Forestry.
Okay, my name is Changama Francis. I'm assistant lecturer from the University of Dar es Salaam, Department of Aquatic Science and Fish Technology.
Sul Ahmed Minja, a member of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, University of Dar es Salaam. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay West, and I'm a technical advisor of CSense NGO, and I'm also a PhD candidate at the University of Kent in the UK, looking at the social processes underpinning community-based conservation of marine wildlife in Tanzania.
Morning. I'm Matthew Mabele from the University of Dodoma.
Morning. I'm Blandina Lugendo from the University of Dar es Salaam, School of Aquatic Sciences and Fisheries Technology. And at the very initial stages of the project, I was involved as member of the NEPSAS board as the vice chair. I'm really happy, glad to be here today, seeing that the project is closing successfully. So many congratulations to your team. Thank you.
I'm Stefano Ponte, Copenhagen Business School, one of the PIs of this project.
I'm Robert Kaczykiro from the Department of Agriculture, Economics and Business of the College of Agriculture Sciences and Food Technology of the University of Dar es Salaam.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nariman Gidawi. I'm from Zanzibar. I'm a marine scientist. I've been working for many years at the University of Dar es Salaam until I retired, and then I became the director of Zanzibar Fisheries Research Institute for 2 years. My contract ended this year, but now I'm also the head of newly founded NGO called Zanzibar Marine and Coastal Solutions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Opportuna Kweka, a senior lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam, a member of NEPSA's Coastal Resources Work Package. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ruth John from Department of Geography at the Open University of Tanzania. In this project, I'm a member of wildlife team.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Brockington, and I help to supervise Dr. Ruth John's thesis and work in different packages on the NEPSIS project and from the University of Sheffield.
My name is Phyllis Rivano from the Geography Department at the University of Dar es Salaam, and in this project I was working under the NEPSA and the Forestry Work Package and as a PhD candidate, just graduated.
Good morning, my name is Mette Olwijk and I'm from Roskilde University in Denmark. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Christine Noe. Was an overall coordinator here in the country of the project, but also coordinating wildlife group, and I'm acting head. I'm acting head of the Department of Geography, which is hosting the project.
Ladies and gentlemen, while we're setting up, I wanted to explain that I'll be chairing this first session, which is mainly a presentation given by Pili and Mette. And just to let Mette know that you'll be getting a 5-minute warning. And Walkie, you are our discussant. I'll give you also a 5-minute warning just before your 15 minutes are up. Okay.
Presentation first, right?
Okay, so we'll be talking about some of our findings from our fieldwork in the forestry part of this project. And we've called this, so this is an idea for a particular paper that could come out of this, and we've called this the role and power of NGOs in brokering local and external interests in forestry governance in times of climate change. So basically what we want to talk about today here is that when you have multiple stakeholders, you also have multiple interests. So in theory, community-based forest management, as we have focused on in this presentation, emphasizes the role of the community. So it's called community-based forest management. But in practice, what happens is that multiple stakeholders are involved in the management of the forest when you have community-based forest management. And multiple stakeholder partnerships therefore mean potential interest clashes.
So our study was conducted in the Kilwa district, and it covered 8 villages. And these villages were of different types of forest management. We are from different types of forest management that include 4 villages under CBFM and 4 villages under non-CBFM. And in CBFM villages, we covered 4 villages, namely Kikole, Likawage, Chakama, and Nainoko. While in non-CBFM villages, we covered 4 villages, Ruhatwe, Mikeregere, Mabuji, and Kiwawa. And from the map here, you can see there are different types of forestry that are covered in Kilwa districts, including national forest reserves, village land forestry reserve under CBFM, and also the forestry that are just covered, other forests that are found in Kilwa district. Different methods, and it was a mixed method approach that includes key informant interviews with the different stakeholders from national, district level, and at the local level. And for instance, at national level, we had interviews with Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism, TFS. At the district level, we have the interviews with the Kilwa District Council, Kilwa District Forest Department, and the TFS at the district level. We also had interviews at the local level with the village government institutions, including the village government leaders and also members of the village natural resource committees. We also conducted focus group discussions with youth, men and women groups, and also mixed groups. We also had 352 household survey, which was covered in 80 villages. We also conducted participant observations, and was assisted with transit walk with the village government leaders at the local level. And we also had social network analysis, where we collected this kind of data from key informant interviews, also visiting the visitors, also reading the information about hectares within visitors' books or in the household survey. Some of the data were also collected from secondary sources to support the data that we collected from the interviews, focus group discussions, and the household surveys.
So here we just wanted to show you some of the different interests involved when you have multi-stakeholder partners. So you can see, you can't see the top here, but it's legitimacy, economic interests, and sustainability interests here. And it's not that they're necessarily entirely different, but they vary a bit, and this could potentially create clashes. For example, when timber companies, FSC, and CSOs are focused on specific types of timber, namely the ones that are commercially have commercial value, this means that when you look at forestry and conservation, you're particularly concerned with particular types of timber. Whereas for village use, it could be other types of timber that might be more important, and for the ecosystem, it might be other types of forest resources that are important. So what is being sustained and what's the focus of the conservation changes a bit depending on which, on the different types of actors. Also in terms of legitimacy and what is it, and the control you get through the forest and your position. For example, having whether or not it's important to have who decides what rules are being implemented, who implements the rules. This gives you different levels of control in the community. And then very specifically, if you look at resources, you can also see that some people get allowances, some people do not get allowances. There's potential for getting donor funding. So there's different resources also at stake for the different stakeholders involved.
In Ecology, we found that there are some interest clashes at the community level. Some of them are related with the issue of gender, for instance, the issue of power interest, and the issue of money interest, and some of were related to the management activities. For instance, on the issue of power interest, we found that there are some, there's still a problem with the leadership positions. For instance, it was found that the men always hold the top leadership positions in the village national resource committees, even though there's an increasing number of women in the village national resource committees. But still, there's a problem in who hold the top leadership position. For instance, VNRC chairperson and the secretary, which were considered to have more influential power in decision making as compared to other positions like being a secretary, which is related with how they are taking care of money in the village national resource committee, but it didn't have more influential power in terms of decision making. We also found that there were some clashes in terms of money, which are related to money interests. That is, men still control some of the forest-related activities, which were considered to have more economic value as compared to women. And for that case, we found that, for instance, timber harvesting was mostly dominated by men, even though now MCDA has changed this kind of activities. Now it is only performed by few people using the chain, what do you call it, the chain, for timber harvesting. But the women were mostly involved in the activities such as tree planting and the tree nurseries. And we also found that there was a problem of gender division of labor, whereby women were mostly restricted in terms of hours to participate in most of the forest-related activities. And in that situation, men were mostly involved were in a good position to participate in village meetings and benefit more with the opportunities that are provided in the civil families compared to men.
So in the literature on development projects and on interventions such as community-based forest management, there has been a tendency to see NGOs as just being intermediaries who are implementing projects. But there's another way of looking at NGOs where you emphasize their role as brokers, and where you see how important they're not just implementing, they're actually brokering between different stakeholders involved. And so that's what we find here in the forestry case. One of the reasons why that there has been so much success in Kilwa District in terms of community-based forest management is because of the brokering role that the NGO has played here. And so from the literature, this broker is described as go-betweens or mediators who occupy a clearly strategic function in between these different stakeholders. And also points out that the broker's strategy is to become indispensable. So the broker, while making it possible for these different stakeholders to work together, also gets a very important role that becomes indispensable in the project. But this does not mean that brokers are cynical intermediaries wearing a mask. Rather, in the literature, it's pointed to that you need to have, that it might even be argued that sincerity or faith in development is an important quality in a broker who has to believe in the cause he defends. This role would be ill-assorted with lucid cynicism. So So what was found in Kilwa district was that there was really one key broker who was the MCDI.
LCDI is involved in all CBFM projects in the Kilwa district, and for the time when our study was conducted, CBFM has managed to support more than 14 villages to be under CBFM. And the word Pingo is coming from a local hardwood that is Pingo, and it is a regional, which was the original focus of MCDI. And MCDI collaborates with different actors, both international and local actors. For instance, at the international, MCDI is involved with, is collaborating with WWF and at the national level. There are other organizations that are involved in forestry conservation that are collaborating with Pingo, including Tanzania Forest Conservation Group and UMITA and other local organizations.
So here are some examples of how the important balancing act MCDI plays here, where the balancing act of negotiating between all these different stakeholders is entirely dependent on this focal organization, MCDI. And so MCDI has been the initiator of community-based forest management in Kilwa district, is a convener of collaboration between local communities and other actors, mediates between actors, has also facilitated RED Plus and forest certification, and helps to link community with local and international markets for certified timber. So one way one way to implement this mediation, or to be successful with this mediation, has been a focus on income, and what we found in the study sites is that many villages wanted to be part of CBFM because they'd seen these success stories, focusing very much also on how these CBFM villages had gotten basically more money out of their, more resources and more benefits from their forest for being part of the CBFM. So this was a very convincing negotiation that you could see these success stories, you can see how the villagers saw how these CBFM villages really were getting concrete benefits from these forests. And they were also importantly linking to the market. CBFM was MCDI was helping the villagers link to the market. But we also noticed or were told from the villagers about increasing problems with this link to the market, how timber buyers are becoming rare. Timber buyers prefer harvesting from large certified forests that are abundant in the most valuable blackwood rather than from several villages with smaller sized VLFRs. Then it's easier for them to harvest from one big forest. And that there was also a tendency for local timber buyers to prefer harvesting from TFS-controlled, uncertified, and less monitored forests. So these challenges, so just because the forest became, the village forest became certified and were community-based, doesn't mean that there was just a market available to them. There was a constant negotiation in order to find these timber buyers. So here just a quote. Customers are not available. The customers go for forests that are outside the CBFM. They do not want to be supervised as we do in CBFM. We believe that they steal some timber after being allowed to harvest. And then also another quote, main problem we have right now is the market availability. So the market isn't necessarily easy to access, and there's a lot of different aspects that need to be considered. And in CBFMs and in village forests, the local communities are portrayed as owners and decision makers, but they are not necessarily the ones making decisions over who should buy and when, because the MCDI helps them with this linking the VLFRs to timber buyers. So while the community members were very happy about, and those that were not part of CBFM aspired to become part of CBFM because they could see an increase in income from marketing their forest products, they were not really sure about fair prices of their products and how they make a profit after consideration of biodiversity protection, livelihood enhancement, and non-monetary forest management costs. And as part of this, how MCDI has also linked to the market, they've actually also, some board members from MCDI have been part of creating a business, the Sound and Fair, a timber buying company. So these links are quite extensive.
CBFM has also played a key role to empower gender. In collaboration with other actors that are involved in forest management in the Kilwa district, CBFM has managed to introduce various gender interventions, for instance, gender awareness programs, which aims at building the capacity of men and women in various leadership skills, to be aware of gender roles in relation to forest management. And also, MCDI has been involved in empowering communities, both men and women at the local level, by introducing various income-generating activities, such as beekeeping production, and also introduction of Vikoba village community banks at the local level, at least to empower both men and women economically and to ensure that they reduce their overdependence on the forestry products. So these are just examples of quotes that were taken at the village level, showing how MCDI is playing a central role in supporting various men and women in trainings and also in various income-generating activities. For instance, the third one shows that women are mostly depending on, one was saying that we are mostly depending on MCDI to support our effort to conserve forests and build the capacities of men and women to participate more actively in conservation activities and benefit equally from forest. And the other one shows that MCDI has been involved in providing ongoing trainings to male and female of VNRC to ensure that village national resource committees, to ensure that there is effective involvement of men and women in management activities.
And there's another way in which MCDI plays an important role as a broker is in terms of translating technocratic knowledge. So they have actually, so in terms of, for example, figuring out how to live up to various certification regimes and even becoming part of these certification regimes. For example, just as came up in one of the key informant interviews in relation to the carbon credit, this was not and still not clear to the villagers. These are very complicated schemes. The MCDI has in fact been helping so much with this part that the villagers have difficulties distinguishing the MCDI from government agencies. And the villagers go to the MCDI when they have questions and concerns, even when unrelated to forestry. So what we found is that the MCDI plays a really important role, and a lot of the success we've seen in terms of the CBFMs in this area is due to MCDI. But that also means that if the MCDI was not there, the community would lose access to key technocratic knowledge and the market, and would face severe difficulties in benefiting from the VLFRs. And the VLFRs used to be open land, general land, that the villagers could benefit from. And while they see themselves benefiting more from the VLFRs, if CBFM somehow, if MCDI was no longer able to help them, the VLFRs would actually become very difficult for them to benefit from. And in that sense, the open land may have been, would be better. So this is to say that having access to a broker such as MCDI really has given the communities a lot of benefits in terms of benefiting from these CBFMs, and we've also seen, which we'll talk more about tomorrow, impacts in terms of the forest condition or effects there. But the question is, who are these brokers accountable to, and how do you ensure that there's downward accountability? And so while there are these benefits, there's also the risk that when you only have one broker, that the villagers become very dependent on this one broker, and that can create potential difficulties in the future depending on how the organization's trajectory ends up being. So that was the presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you also for saving some of the time that we lost at the beginning. I would like us to move straight on, please, to the discussant remarks. We had a last-minute cancellation from Eliza Sunguzia. So Matthew, you get the full time to go through the discussant remarks. Do you want to come to the front, please? And let's the presenters come and take their seats.
Yeah, so good morning everybody once again. And thanks to Pili and Nete for such a wonderful presentation to spark some discussion this early morning. So I was given a task to sort of try to bring up some points for discussion. So I'm just going to, yeah, so maybe one thing that I wanted to note, so I read the chapter of the book, the forest chapter, and also heard the presentation. There are sort of different things that have been presented in these two writings. So I'll be going through both. But I wanted first to start with the presentation, just trying to highlight some points for further improvement. As you say, this is going to be an article. So first I wanted to note on the tensions that you have mentioned, the clashes of interest that you formed. I think that is a very good sort of aspect, bearing in mind we have MCDI, but also we have the Tanzania Forest Service agents. I think one thing that maybe you did not fully discuss it is the tension that TFS brings to community-based forest management. And I think one of the things that is the reason for that, as you might be aware, TFS has annual revenue collection targets. So for them, having these CDFM schemes and this certified timber is sort of a competition, particularly for villages. So I think that should be some aspect that could quite improve the paper. But also from the presentation, I also wanted to point out something about that you mentioned how several villages are trying to increase their areas for CDFM. Yeah, there's a slide on commercialization of the forest where you point out about how several villages are trying to be part of CBFM, and some of the participating villages are trying to increase the areas for CBFM. One thing that I could think out of such a move is the possibility of crowding out effect, particularly for land for agriculture. Because if you want to just increase more land for CBFM, because you have seen there are some benefits, then there might be possibilities of such an issue to occur. So, yeah, so that could also be something that you could speak out more. Also about the role of community. I think that is something that is of interest in the presentation, but also in the chapter. So I also would like to, for you maybe to discuss more on the role of community through the entire certified timber value chain, particularly when you think of MCDI being the broker for the markets. So, that's where you might question the role of community. But so it would be quite interesting to see the dynamics behind the role of community through the entire certified timber value chain. And lastly, on the presentation, you could also reflect on the so-called technocratic knowledge as a structure or as a mechanism of marginalization. Because with this, again, here we could also bring the role of community, because it's all about trying to, MCDI trying to be also a broker of this technocratic knowledge, trying to translate all the science and all the technical expertise to the community. So this, I think, could also be some sort of, could lead in some sort of creation of few village elites, particularly the members of the Village Natural Resource Committee, who might have access to, to training, might have access to, the record-keeping books and all that, which are part of this technocratic knowledge. So that could also be quite an interesting aspect to discuss. So going back to the chapter, I'm sorry for you who have not read the chapter, but I had the privilege of reading the chapter. I also wanted to point out some few things that could help to spark the discussion this morning, but also could help to improve the chapter, as you say that is still under in progress. But one thing that I quite liked about the chapter, you talk about perceived environmental outcomes. How about CBFM has improved forest conditions? I think that's quite an sort of, I think in Tanzania there's sort of a consensus around that. And I think one of the early papers which brought such a discussion was, I think it was 2008, Tom Blomley, who used to be PFM technical advisor, he pointed out that PFM has contributed positively to improved forest conditions. But also one thing that you mentioned briefly in the paper, but I think you also pointed out in the policy brief, it's, so if you just look on contribution of CBFM on CBM forest without, or at the same time neglecting non-CBFM forests, I think that's quite dangerous because of the outbound effect. Because as you pointed out, there is quite massive ongoing degradation, deforestation in forests that are not part of CBFM schemes. So I think that's quite a very important point for the chapter, but also for the project to bring up in the discussion, and particularly in the policy discussion, because the assumption is that PFM is contributing to improving forest conditions. But actually, if you look on forests that are not part of PFM, the situation is quite worse. So I think that's a very important point to raise. But also, maybe as a form of question for the forest working group. So you mentioned about Kikole being one of the earliest, actually the earliest CBFM village in Kilwa. So when I was reading the chapter, but also I was quite interested to find out if there are any significant differences between Kikole and the other, participating villages, being the earliest CBFM, but also being the one that actually participated since Utumi times. So it could be quite interesting in the reflections when discussing this to see what sort of differences in the outcomes, in the socio-economic, but also in environmental outcomes that Kikole brings to the findings. But also, one other aspect that it has been mentioned briefly in the chapter is on the role of charcoal. In very few villages that has been mentioned, particularly in Migeregere and Kiwawa villages, where there are some sort of charcoal making activities that are going on. I think charcoal is a very complex product, and there is one survey that was done by TFCG actually, by Albert and Monga, which showed charcoal being a forest resource which brings more revenue to the government than timber. You know, so that sort of dynamic, I think it could also just reflect a bit on that, because it's something that is, the government doesn't want to say charcoal is the highest you know, source of revenue, but actually if you read the numbers, it shows charcoal brings more revenue than timber. So that we could also yeah, it could also reflect that on a bit. Yeah, and also in the chapter you also mention some of the other organizations that were part of, some of the organizations that were involved in sort of helping some community initiatives in the participating villages, the like of Tanganyika Christian Refugee Service, Action Aid, Aga Khan Foundation, and so on. So when I read this, I was something that just came, and I was thinking that I don't know if you have done that in other parts, but I was thinking that maybe you could also reflect on the problem of attribution. You know, when you want to try to see the significance of CBFM comparing to these other interventions. You know, so yeah, so that could also be some interesting area for discussion. Yeah, and yeah, it seems. Yeah, maybe just last remarks. But so you could also, as for the interest of furthering discussions on CBFM in Tanzania, but also for the interest of furthering research on CBFM in Tanzania, I also thought maybe you could also point out some research directions. You know, after I've done this research for 5 years, so you could also point out some research direction on CBFM in Tanzania. That could also be of interest to Tafori, who I've heard that there's a guy from Tafori, and just sort of showing possible future research areas that we can focus in the coming future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby, and thank you for coping with the time constraints as well. I much appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have in the timetable 20 minutes. In actual fact, 10 minutes. I'm going to keep things going on into break a little bit, I'm afraid, as the discussion proceeds, because I think I don't want to lose the opportunity to talk through some of the ideas which have been raised. Matthew's come back with us with a lot of things to think about. We've got the questions of perceived environmental outcomes and how these might vary according to the different sources of data. We've got the dynamics of the role of communities up and down the value chain. We've got this fascinating fact that regulation produces patchy effects, that if you regulate forests well in one area, this will actually increase to the degradation problems in other parts of the landscape. We've got this extraordinary fact, which I did not know, about the political embarrassment of charcoal, because it is so powerful financially, but yet so dirty, I think would be the phrase to use. Whereas certified timber, clean, useful, proper, but rather slight income. We have, as you said, the question of research attribution and the fascinating issue of future research directions. We have people in the room conducting new research projects now about village forest management who are already showing us some fascinating ways to go forward. So please, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. I'd be welcome questions. We have one at the back. I might take them in groups. And if there aren't others, then we've got two here. So yourself first, Abdallah, please.
Thank you for a very good study. I was interested to follow up the challenges that we are given. And the one was that now buyers, they prefer to buy more from the TFS controlled forests than any other forest types or regimes, for example, community-based forest management. I would like to know more about that one. But regarding the challenges, the paper or the presentation is silent about the new regulation that came in. That one has put a lot of problems in the market of timber from the village land forest reserves, including other products like charcoal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take the second question and then responses to those.
Yeah, thank you again for quite an interesting presentation. I think I have a comment and also a question, and I'm looking at the big picture. So CBFM is an approach which we see to reduce deforestation at a national level. But the interests have been just confined between TFS and the NGO. But there are other quite interesting other interests from other sectors which are very crucial to recognize, because I would have been much interested to know on the non-CBFM what is happening, whether the forest is still there. Because at the end of the day, CBFM is an incentive for the communities to keep the forest so that they can get livelihood. Otherwise, they would turn that into agriculture to get the same thing. So the pressure here is on land. And the CBFM is the only option to use that land into something. But the other factors, which like agriculture, like expansion of the municipal, once you expand the city, once you expand the Lindi, the forest disappears. And the forest becomes, it is not even recognized in the expansion of the municipal. For example, Lindi has been expanded into villages. And once you have the municipal, that means there is no structure for the village. And that is eating forest. It destroys all the structures which have been there. But second, you have also the livestock, which is coming up in these areas. So these are they have interest, but they are cross-cutting. They are from different other sectors. The pressure we have on keeping these resources, so is within the interest between TFS or between the government or within the communities, but second is between the sectors, which put a lot of pressure to maintain this resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have responses, please, to those questions? Sorry, Pili, do you want to put your microphone on?
Okay, I just want to respond to one of the questions that was raised. This one? Okay. I just want to respond to one of the questions that have been raised about why buyers are more interested to harvest in a TFS forest than in a CBFM. As we found in the CBFM, and during the interview that we had with the key informants, they said that there are more restrictions in the CBFM villages in the process of harvesting timber as compared to TFS forests. For instance, on the size of the trees that are supposed to be harvested, and also there are more supervision for timber harvesting as compared to area where there is area under the control for Tanzania Forestry Service. Yeah. That's how I know.
Yeah.
No, I just want to thank you both, Matthew, and for these comments also from the room. I think more than questions, there were just really good comments that of other factors that are also playing a role in this situation. And so thank you for those. And I don't think I have much more to add than just to say that these are really important considerations that we should also be taking into account. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to invite another round of questions, and also because we have a colleague from the MCDI in the room, I'd be fascinated to hear your own responses to what you've heard.
Thank you. I'll start with the one which you were saying about yes, MCDI is brokering, but I think it's not controlling the market, or it's not the only broker, because when it comes to international markets, that's where we play. We have a major role for the international markets, but for the local markets, no, because they are the villagers. They can find the buyers themselves, and there are more buyers for the present situation. There are even more buyers who go directly to the village without our knowledge. We will have known when they have already reported to the communities, and then we are contacted that just to update us there are these buyers. So I think on that point you need to make some adjustment. The other point was I would like to comment is there was a question that the brokers, they are accountable to who? Legally, all NGOs, they are accountable to the government, because NGOs, according to the NGO Act, they are registered under the Ministry of Health and Community Development, under the NGO registers. This is where we report, and they check on us to ensure we are complying with the NGO regulation and the other national laws. There was also an issue about I think the other slide before this one, which was mentioned about the board member with the company. I think that's is not correctly reflected, because also that company does not control, or it's not the only company which buys the blackwood. There are so many other companies which they are sourcing timber from, certified timber from those CBFM village. Though the Sound and Fair was the major one, but it's not the only. Maybe a little bit more on why more buyers goes to TFS managed forest than the CBFM forest. I think Piles just said that correctly, but now is the situation, I think, is also changing. Maybe during the study, yes, that was the situation. I think now is it's like 50-50. Some goes to the CBFM village, but also there are some which goes to TFS.
Thank you. Welcome a second round of questions. Please, sir. Yep. One over here, and then a second one, third one over there.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for a very good presentation, and it was really great. There's one thing that I would like to ask when we talk of gender roles, gender equity, there is one thing that is happening and emphasized always, which in my opinion is wrong. That want to see equity in every forest activities. Let me just point out some few. That it seems that in your explanation, you were looking at the proportion of men and women in these different forest activities and operation, and your interest, whenever you saw that there is a little percent, I mean a small percent of women, you say that there was inequality. And in my opinion, that is I consider to be very wrong, because there are some of activities that women, just based on the nature of the activities, will be less compared to men. For example, harvesting operations. And it has been proved that activities like nursery, tree nursery, management, than men. And I would like to get your comment on this, so that we do not always emphasize something which is impractical. How did you consider that? And how do you take into consideration, how do you take that into your...
Could I ask that you can keep the question short, please? We have two other people in the room.
Yes, thank you.
The question of difference in inequality.
Thank you very much. I think that was understood. How did you consider that in your presentation? And
thank you very much indeed. We have a second question.
Thank you very much. I think this was one of the nice presentations, and I have two questions. My interest started from the title of the presentation, that NGOs are increasingly becoming brokers as opposed to being facilitators, if I'm right. And this is the case of MCDI. I'm tempted to believe that this is the situation across the country when you look at NGOs. So I was interested to see at the conclusion whether this is the way to go. Are this how NGOs are supposed to operate? What does the law say in terms of whether they are supposed to be brokers or facilitators? I would like to hear about that. But the other thing I think you mentioned about lack of women influential power in decision making. How does that come? Is it because they are not interested in participating, or there are factors? I think I missed that one, so if you can explain. Thank you.
Thank you. Suli, Yamwisho.
Thanks. I'm just making comments. You don't have to really answer. I really loved your intersections of gender issues. These are critical. I think most studies have been missing that out, and it's coming out very clearly. I think what you need to stress is that intra-household relationship and power relationship. And you pointed out, like, the chainsaws are owned by men. But I think even to just clear some doubts from my colleague there, I think these issues of gender are clearly, but I think we have to see in a positive way. Like, how do we assess? Yes, there are biological differences. The woman cannot climb into the top of the tree and cut. Maybe some are doing that. But how do we see that, and how do we look into that changes from generation to generation? It's not something that is easy, because these issues are affected by our religious norms and customs and traditions. Yeah. And then into the question that is hanging out in the PowerPoint there, the downward accountability. I know most NGOs are repeatable, and they have a great role that have been playing. I think the question could be tricked a bit, not only that NGOs are accountable to the government, but also actually I think MCDI is in a better position to give example on how they are accountable to their constituencies that are actually villages. So that is really what is important, and that's the lesson we take from these kinds of engagement. And there is a partnership that has been very fruitful between researchers and NGOs like MCDI. Not only you guys have been researching them, but I am one of them who have really benefited from understanding the relationship between NGOs and communities in a very much of a sustainable way. And not only the NGOs that are project implementers, 5 years they're gone, but these are like people who are centered into the lives and real lives of the communities. This is what is needed to come out in this kind of a study. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask, Opportuna.
Thank you. I have a question on one of the commenter on why they think that women are better off in nursery and not in harvesting, if we can get some information on that.
Thank you. Could I ask, because we are now eating into our break time, I would like, Mette, could you respond about the question about brokering? And then Pili, you're going to have the last word about when difference becomes inequality.
Okay, Dan. So the idea of brokering has really come because that is what's happening. So it's not whether it should be happening or not, but that is what we see happening. And I think a lot of these, I think in the literature and understandings of the development sector, there's been a little bit of a tendency to see it as sort of, or these sort of project implementations also as sort of a machine where things are just happening. But at every link in this, from the donor funding to the implementation to interactions with the community, there are people and organizations involved in making it possible. It doesn't just happen because there are always these different clashes, and you mentioned that the local communities are also acting on their own in the market, which is something that the organization needs to understand and be aware of in terms of making sure that the whole thing works still, in terms of that there is enough wood left for the certified market, the FSC market. So I think I think it's also to make us aware as researchers that when we look at these situations, we need to know that there are these key organizations that are probably not just implementing, but playing a much more important role that we can learn a lot from because of how they are in a position to both understand what's going on from the government and the donor side, but also what's going on in the local communities. And if you don't know both of these projects won't work. There won't be this sort of translation and mediation. So it's an encouragement to start rethinking how we look at what's going on.
Thank you, Mette.
Yeah, based on the question that was raised in relation to gender inequality or equality in participation in various management activities, for instance, the way...
Samahani, Pili, I can't hear you very well.
Sasa hii haifanyi, hii inafanya. Hii nimebonyeza tena. Iko on. Okay. So I agree that there are differences on the roles and the responsibilities that men and women are involved, have, and this can affect the ability of men or women to participate in various activities, including forest-related activities. But do we agree that women themselves say that we are not supposed to be involved in timber harvesting? Based on the question that or discussion that was done in one of the CBFM village in Kisangi villages, for instance, there was a discussion about women who said that we wanted to participate in timber harvesting, and they even forcefully requested the village government leaders to participate in harvesting in Pingo in 2012. And women showed men that they can participate in timber harvesting. So we should involve the women themselves to say whether they are interested to participate in timber harvesting or not, but not just to focus on what is already said, that men are supposed to harvest timber and women are supposed to be involved in tree nursery or planting trees. How do women themselves perceive their role? Are they able to participate in timber harvesting or not? So if they can say, they can participate.
Eli, thank you. I think that's a robust response and an excellent way to end this session. Thank you very much indeed for your questions, for your participation, and for your patience in allowing us to carry on a little bit into your break. We have, I think, just over 15 minutes now to get some to your coffee and to return here by 10:30, please, to begin the next session. Thank you all. Please a round of applause for the presenters for discussing.
nice.
Hello.
Just
We
a
have a few
moment.
minutes, but if you can pass by the committee table, if you have receipts as we go out and in, please.
Jamani, tumsikilize Tina hapo naomba. Tumsikilize Tina jamani.
Thank you.
Do you want to, can you, do you have it on a drive? Because then they can just...
The one I got from him this morning is up there.
That's perfect.
That's a typical sexist response to say so when you say
Yeah. Thank you. That was
Well done. That was a powerful answer.
Asante. Yeah.
Just do that.
Asante. Nimefurahi.
That energy is important.
Asante. Yaani wewe acha tungeona mbona mgongo. Asante. Yeah, we are going to start and you can start introducing and then we'll continue. So we have a short.
Right.